Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. We take a look at elections going on, and joining us in studio right now, Conservative State Representative Dustin Burrows, representing District 83, running for re-election. Welcome back. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on this morning.
Absolutely. You've been out campaigning, talking to a lot of folks. Where all have you been, and what all are people talking to you about?
Look, I've been, all over the district. I've been in Seminole. I've been in Snyder. I've been everywhere and just visiting and making sure, I know what's on people's minds, what's important to them next session. And, of course, it's the same things that I think are important to the listeners here, making sure we deal with and address property taxes, making sure our schools are adequately funded, taking care of school safety, making sure Texas Tech has a vet school, dealing with the high price of health care reforms and so many other things.
Yeah. You bring up, and then this is also always an issue when you have races for the Texas legislature, school funding and property taxes, and how you balance the two. And you've got one side that says the state legislature, the Republicans are chipping away at public ed. They don't care about public education. They hate teachers, even though I believe one of the local school districts named you a public education defender, correct?
Yeah, look,
how do they do that when you hate kids and hate education?
This is after the 2016 election, the Democrats all huddled and said, we've got to be competitive in rural Texas, and our issues and platform are extraordinarily unpopular. We know people don't like big government. They actually care about social issues and things. So why don't we just say that they hate children and puppy dogs, and that's how we're going to run them? And they all got together, and, you're seeing those campaigns, and I think they all went to campaign school, and they've come up with a narrative, and it's false, and it's, sometimes frustrating because good people, don't always get to hear both sides of the story, but Republicans care about public education, and we care about it, and there's a lot of good things that happen not only on a statewide level but for our local schools. Talk to Slayton ISD and some of the others. We eliminated the small school penalty, a bill that I had filed. We extended ASETAR funding and made sure our rural schools are going to be vibrant and part of our culture going forward.
When it comes to funding, to funding schools and also property taxes, these two are connected. Talk about that a little bit, and are we adequately funding schools right now? Does the state need to put more money in? And what needs to happen with property taxes? Because you can go around anywhere, and you've heard this from a lot of people, I'm sure. Property taxes are high, and they keep going up.
Yeah, so look, there's two separate questions there that are completely tied together. The question is, how much are people paying in property taxes, and can we do something to control, especially the rate of growth? The answer is absolutely they're paying too much, and there are things that we can do, things the governor's led on that I fully support and have written op-eds about. Also, the second question is, are schools adequately funded? Some are, some aren't. And there's also some things that we want to do to try to get money in the classroom for our teachers, for school safety. But if we're going to put more money into these classrooms, we want to make sure it gets there. And, we have some regulations. I've seen school districts who've built water parks and done some other things. And so, yes, we can do more. I actually voted to do more than we did last session. I think there's a lot of opportunity to help our schools out, but it's got to be targeted and go to the right places and making sure it's improving the quality of education for our children.
Yeah, and how do we get there? Because it's saying we're going to throw more money at it. That's not the silver bullet. You could throw as much money as you want. That's not necessarily going to improve education. You've got to do it the right way, right?
Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt. I think that's what people say is, okay, I'm happy, if my tax dollars go to things, but I want to make sure that it's being, spent wisely. And just shoveling money at anything is never a good idea. But in order to actually have new investment capital, that's the way to look at it, we've got to do something with the cost of health care. That's what's eating our state budget up the most. What we're spending on entitlements for Medicaid and what we're doing, for health care and those types of costs, we've got to get that under control. I was so proud the governor went and appointed 6 legislators, including myself and Senator Perry, to come up on a task force to come up with ideas on retired teacher health care, state employee health care, and looking at some really good business practices so we can incentivize healthy living, so that we can basically use our leverage to make more price transparency and shopping around. I'm certain the reason I was asked to do that is because the governor's heard that, price transparency is something I'm extraordinarily passionate about and have done a lot of research on. And so I'm hoping that this will be on the table, next session. I feel strongly and certain that it will be.
We sort of hit on property taxes what is the plan? Is it the cap? And, if so, what do you think the cap is going to look like going into the next session?
Yeah, it's going to be, the rollback rate when it first came in the late 70s was at 5%. It got moved to 8% because of hyperinflation under the Carter administration. It then came back down, and we've tried year after year to get it to 5%. I even voted to lower it to 4% and to put some, basic restrictions, but allow people, if they want to go above it, to let commissioners come out and make a case at a county level and say, hey, we've got to bust the cap, and here's why, and let the people have a choice in doing that. Abbott rolled out a very detailed plan in June. There's a lot of really great parts about that, and I intend to work with our governor to put some of these things in places because over time it will make a good difference.
When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with State Representative Dustin Burrows, representing District 83, running for re-election. When we come back, we'll get into some other issues facing this area and the district, and get into some other areas where that may come up in the next legislative session. We'll be right back. Chad Hasty Show, News Talk, KFYO. Thank you very much for tuning in. Final segment of the show, final segment of the week, and our final segment with Conservative State Representative Dustin Burrows, running for re-election in HD 83. I don't know how much this has come up when you're when you're going around the district, but the last time I drove to Dallas, took 114 Wise County. There were Tier 2 status, vote for Tier 2 signs all over the place. With Lubbock annexing a lot of land, I've heard from a lot of callers who say we need to be in Tier 2. We need to be in Tier 2. Is this something that's going to come up in the next legislative session? And do you think that Lubbock County needs to be in Tier 2?
So, look, I actually drafted the amendment to make sure that people had the right to vote to actually get into Tier 2 if they wanted to, and Phil King is the one who filed it. And, I think it's up to the people, of Lubbock. I think there'll be some annexation talk next session. We made such a big lift last session to get where we did. Could the bill have been different, potentially better? Sure. But, it was certainly a step in the right direction. I think the voters of Lubbock County are going to have to look at annexation and make a decision. If they want to start a petition to change tiers, they have that right to do that. And we gave that to them when we ended the session last session.
I'm pretty sure the cities didn't appreciate y'all doing that too much.
Well, I usually talk to the constituents of West Texas to see what they want, and usually don't talk to the trade groups.
Yeah. When you're going around, what are some other issues? I know you were part of a panel. Was it yesterday?
Yes.
Well, talk about that a little bit, because I know y'all talked about the funding of roads in rural Texas, which is something that, it may not be the sexiest campaign issue, but it's an important issue.
Oh, wow. You drive down, especially in, south of here, and our roads are beat up, and our roads to the north of here are beat up. We have heavy traffic going on. So I was on a panel with Senator Seliger, Senator Buckingham, my good colleague and good friend Brooks Landgraf. Speaker Craddock was the moderator. It's always scarier when the moderator knows that much more than you do. But we talked about it, and I'll tell you the thing that came, which was just good to hear, is everybody agreed, on what I said earlier. It's the cost of health care that's eating our lunch. Those were Senator Seliger words precisely, that, we have to get something under control, because, it's not only people's household budgets, it's not only, small businesses not being able to hire, it is the Texas budget. If you want to know what precludes us from making better investments in roads, and we do okay, we can always do better, what precludes us from making, property tax relief even more significant, it is how much of that part of a budget we continue to spend over and over and over again.
Yeah, and you look at the future for road funding. Do you think anything as far as for Lubbock County and for the Lubbock area? They've talked about, I know, extending I-27 further south. Do you think anything like that's going to be coming up in the near future?
Well, we ended up getting the study done that we needed to get done, and of course, we're going to continue to meet to see if there's anything out at the legislature. Interstates are, of course, national funding, large part, and I don't know where that is in the D.C. level, but we continue to communicate and talk with the group that wants to do that. I'm a big proponent of trying to get I-27 extended both south and north, and hopefully bring some more industry and more traffic and travel through this part.
If you do win re-election, what are a couple of your goals moving into the next session?
Well, we've talked about a lot of them, from property tax reform to school finance and school safety and dealing with health care costs. But, of course, I'm a big proponent of the Texas Tech Vet School. It's continuing to be a political battle. We saw a lot of shenanigans that shaked up. It looks like maybe some democracy finally broke out with the Board of Regents. But, you will see that I've got at least a couple tricks up my sleeve, and would like to see that vet school named after Senator Robert Duncan, somebody who I continue to admire for his love love of this region and putting our interests ahead of his own.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about school safety. What does that mean? What's going to be the school safety bill or bills that we're going to be looking at in the next session?
Bills, plural. I expect it to be an emergency item. I mean, this is something Republicans will and want to lead on. And we're going to talk about a bunch of different things, from grant funding for schools who want to make investments in either hiring law enforcement or hardening the schools, to dealing with some best practices to early intervene and identify those children most at risk and get them some of the help that they need, to basically making sure that we're monitoring some social media with resources the state has, to helping our school marshal program so that, if we have school marshals, they don't have to keep their guns locked into a place they can't get to them when they need them. They can carry them. Again, Governor Abbott has laid out a very thoughtful plan. There's most of the things in there I intend to support, and we're going to lead on this hopefully early in session. You're going to see me a big proponent of getting that done.
It sounds like, I know the governor floated the idea of a red flag law. It sounds like he's kind of pushed that back down and said we don't need it. The lieutenant governor came out and said we don't need it. It doesn't sound like that's going to be going anywhere, right?
I'm not very excited about it. But look, here's my middle child came home the other day, and I asked him how school was. He said, well, we all went into the bathroom with our teacher, and she read us books and told us to be very quiet in case the bad guys came. I realized that, when I grew up, it was tornado drills here in West Texas we went to the hallways for. This is the new world we live in, and we have to understand this is the world we live in. And there's not a parent or grandparent or just person in the community who's not concerned with these school shootings. And we're going to be thoughtful, but we're going to lead to make sure that we do as much as we can to prevent these from happening again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the last session there was talk of different when it came to kids and the foster care system. Is that going to be another big issue?
Yeah, we made substantial changes. I'm so proud of the work that we did last session to do this. We put new funding. We ended up getting, more helping to try to keep some of our people at the front lines more in there. We partnered with our faith-based community, and so proud of that legislation to make sure that they have a true partnership in getting this done. We're going to evaluate what we did. There's going to be some changes. Obviously, when you make that big of changes last session, we're going to need to tweak, and I've been involved in a lot of interim groups working on those, and I expect that's going to be another big topic. But it's such an important thing. It doesn't always go noticed, but our CPS workers, I applaud them. They have one of the most difficult and toughest jobs to do. At 2 o'clock in the morning, they're called out to try to get a child out of a dangerous situation with law enforcement, and they're passionate, about their job, and they do great work, and we're going to, make sure we do better for everybody.
What type of speaker are you going to be looking for?
Number one, they need to be a Republican. Number two, they need to be conservative. I want somebody that's strong. I want somebody that's a leader. If we're going to accept leadership by somebody, it's got to be somebody that, actually understands the entire system. I want somebody who is going to, work with the governor, who's going to work with the lieutenant governor, who's going to work with, the members to make sure they can represent their districts. And they need to have a strong personality. They need to be someone that we can be proud of. And when they go out there and speak for the Texas House, that everybody knows the Texas House is in the room when present.
Do you think that we're going to see wide agreement from Republicans?
Yeah, I ran for him, the vice chair of the caucus. I actually will become the chair in November, 7th after the election is over. And part of my job is to build consensus and make sure that, all Republicans can be united and get behind somebody. And after this nasty election cycle, I think that it's going to be easier to get people to do. And I'm continually working on trying to get Republicans on the same page to find a conservative Republican who can lead the Texas House, in the upcoming session.
Yeah, I guess I have to ask you. I know you're not going to answer this, but I do have to ask. Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, but at this point in time, I'm going to keep my cards to myself.
See, I knew it. And I knew you weren't going to answer that one.
Ask me again in about 2 weeks.
Okay. Oh, I like that. All right, 2 weeks. Jody, mark it down on the calendar 2 weeks from now. Dustin Burrows joining us here in studio as we wrap up today's program. Tell folks where they can find out more about you and your campaign.
Yeah, look, go to burrowsfortexas.com. That's the same as my Facebook handle, my Twitter handle. We try to keep information updated on what I'm going on, what I'm doing, opportunities to come meet. And if none of those work for you, call my number. It's on the website, and love to visit with you, see what's on your mind. Some of the best ideas I've ever had for good legislation has come from, phone calls from people who get it, and would love to hear from everybody. And, of course, get out there and vote. We need more representation in West Texas, and, we need more people to show up at the polls.
And I do think that is another – you brought it up about phone calls. And we've talked about this. I think probably the last time we talked about this was when I was doing the show from your office. And it was one of those where y'all do listen to people when they call, but you don't get a lot of people who do call on the issues of the legislature. You don't get as many as I guess many people would think, right?
Yeah, sometimes there's groups that get people excited to call about things that perhaps they wouldn't call unless they were told to. But here's where some of the best calls I've ever gotten is, people that have been thinking about something in their particular field, wherever they go to work in the day, and they say there's something just wrong with this, and it's their own idea, and they call, and oftentimes they find out a lot of other people have the same concerns, and maybe we can do something about it, maybe they can't, but they'll at least get my thoughts and have an honest conversation about it.
Yep. Conservative Republican State Representative Dustin Burrows, as always, appreciate it, and we wish you the best of luck, and we need to get you back in Austin.
Thank you, Chad. Appreciate you very much.